Oh, shalom, my friends. Shalom, my enemies. This is your old pal, Rabbi Sol Solomon. I am the founder and spiritual leader of Temple Sons of Bitches in Great Neck, New York. And I am thrilled and delighted and excited to be talking to an old friend of the producer of this program, Dave Lefkowitz, because he has been a theater critic for decades, and he is known this educator and this writer. She heard hundreds and hundreds of reviews can be found and read on the website TotalTheater.com, so you're going to want to check that. I'm going to ask you also to unmute so that we can hear you when you start to talk. She's a longtime academic with, check this out, an interdisciplinary doctorate in speech and theater and English. She has spent 30 plus years as a South Florida critic, covering places like Florida Studio Theater and the Oslo. Lots of stories to tell. Also, we want to ask her about her amazing autograph collection. Is going to be really exciting. We are talking, my friends, I'm talking like Joe Franklin now, to the one, the only, Marie J. KILKER. Shalom, Marie.
Hi.
Hello, how are you? How are you on this fine pre-holiday Shabbos?
I'm fine. I don't know when I'm supposed to be pushing, but can you see me all the way?
I don't see your boobs, but I see your head and your neck. You look fine. You look great. And we hear you, and we're good. I love the backdrop. You're all set. You're fantastic. We're in great shape, and we have so much to talk about with Marie J. KILKER. So first of all, how are you?
Well, I'm as good as I could be, I guess, at age 88 and having gone through 4 operations last year.
Can you share what they were?
Other than that, I'm okay. I don't get around as well as I used to, but I'm still with my tethered to my walker, but I use it going to the theaters to review.
So have you've been back to the theater in person? Yes, you have gone to shows in Florida, right? In person.
Yes.
Like what? Like what have you seen since?
Just lately, I've been at Florida Studio Theater a bit, and I saw the Michael Bublé. It was a cabaret that was made into a main place, and Rounding Third, the play, and mostly cabarets and so on, because this is getting toward the very end of the season. Oslo doesn't start until October. They're coming on in October, although the conservatory, the FSU Oslo Conservatory, will be a little sooner. And also the Black Theater Troupe, which I saw in about 2 months ago. That one will start in September, the end of September.
Now, do you, in your reviewing, maybe not recently, but years past, did you go further afield to like Miami or other parts of Florida?
I don't go to Miami and anything because it's so far away, really, actually. And I'm now at a point where I don't drive very far anything. But when I get a ride to Tampa, St. Petersburg, which is about 50 some miles from my house, then I will go to the theaters there, particularly to Free Fall Theater in Pittsburgh and in St. Petersburg, and also the main Tampa Theater.
Now, let me ask you, in all the years, how long have you lived in Florida? Because you were from Chicago, I think. But how long have you been?
I am from Chicago. Yes, I was born and raised there, and I stayed at least with parents in some way or another until I was 30 and got married and left. And
left to come to Florida, right?
So an awful lot of my story of how I became a theater critic and got so interested in theater and so on comes from my work, my being in Chicago. And I grew up in a place where actually it was behind my father's office. He was a medical doctor and came from a poor family and, squeezed through. So he had his office on the corner of Chicago and Western Avenues. And I was in back of that. I was the only kid around at all. In fact, the Johnny Roncoli, who ran the saloon downstairs, the corner, always called me the kid. I'd go in there and get popcorn and pretzels free. But there was always there. And then later when I moved to a little bit farther west and a tiny bit farther north, of that, there was always a movie theater a block and a half from my house, where there weren't children. And even when I went back into school and that, it was 3-4 blocks away, and most of the kids were not in my area where I lived. So I was a movie mad kid, actually. Spent a lot of time in the movies. And that's how I got into a theater that's filmed, if you will.
Right, yeah.
And so not having children around to play with and so on and so forth, I used to go about once a month with my mother. She would go downtown to Marshall Fields to get her hair done, because she had a particular person there that she liked. And we would go to a movie there at the Chicago Theater, the Oriental, the Roosevelt, the Vickers, and so on, all the theaters that were there. And at one point we went down, and I somehow her mother lost her, because after going to the film, and then we had some kind of lunch, and then I was following her around a 5 and 10 that was very big on State Street. And I lost her somehow, following the wrong skirt, I think, around.
Oh, I've done that. Yeah.
And somehow or another, we couldn't get together and so on. So what absolutely happened was I finally got to the point where I could go home alone on the streetcar at the time. And everybody decided that I could go myself downtown to the theater if I wished to, because that would be a treat for me. So then I started going downtown to the theater on Saturdays. And one time I was about I think 12 years old, something like that at the time, 11 years old, actually, when I was separated from her and got my own way down.
Right.
And I went to the theater, and I met somebody outside one of the theater and said, "Are you going to get an autograph later?" And I said, "What is that?" And they said, "Well, after the stage shows at the Chicago and at the Oriental theaters, they usually have a stage show after the movie. And then these people come in and out, going to their appearance or coming out of their appearance before the next appearance, and we get their autographs." So I waited until September 11th, I believe, or September 14th. I still had that down, and went to the Chicago Theater. And I don't remember what I said. I think it was "So Proudly We Hail," but which was a wartime show. And I went to the backstage, and I got some autographs. My first autograph was from a member of the Louis Jourdan and his Symphony 5, which was a prominent Black theater group, singing and instrumental group. And I also got Louis Jourdan's autograph too, but the first one I got was from a person in his place. So
now you have
it here, in fact. Just a moment.
Marie KILKER is talking about the beginnings of her autograph collection, which she has in a book, and we're going to be talking about like big movie people and theater people too.
Very first autograph I got.
Yeah. Okay, hold a little closer if you can.
It was a man named Ed Rosen. He was the trumpeter player there. So by that time, see, I knew about this thing, so I had bought a little autograph book. It's all falling apart now, but I've got a whole bunch of it. What I learned very much was to take other pieces of paper with me, little notebooks and everything, in case I couldn't get things. So an awful lot of my autograph books have things pasted in them.
Well, so you have several. It's not just that book. You have several different books.
And that particular time, I also got an autograph of a new up-and-coming singer who was the featured singer, Perry Cuomo.
Wow.
So I have his autograph, and I also took a picture of him. I had a little camera with me.
Oh.
So I've got those still. Okay. So I started doing this every day. And what I found out was that there was a regular little group that would come in for autographs all the time. And we all became friends. So that instead of having neighborhood pals, I had these autograph pals.
Now let me ask you something. Are any of them still alive as you are, and you still keep in touch?
I think one is still living because I heard something about that from a good friend of mine that's in Chicago. In fact, my best friend, we were editors of our paper together, went all through high school together, and we're very, very close friends. He was like my almost brother. And anyway.
So let me ask you also, Marie.
I will tell you the story of how I got into theater through all these movies, and I have all these autographs. I can show pictures of it.
Yeah.
But I was in back of the stage of the Oriental Theater, and it looked down on this street, not on State Street, but the Dearborn Street, which is next to it. And at that point, if you looked out of the stage door and walked down a couple of inches or so, or not even half a block, just a short ways, you were on Dearborn Street. And what you faced was the back of the Woods Theater, which was a theater that showed things like by Samuel Goldwyn and all that kind of thing, because facing Randolph Street. Randolph was the street of movie theaters in addition to the Oriental. And next to that, there were two other theaters, the Harris and the Selwyn. All of that now is the Goodman Theater.
In Chicago,
which is very well known now in Chicago, one of the leading theaters in America. And so all of it was the Goodman Theater. But somebody, when I was waiting for the autograph, said to me, there are some movie stars across the street. And I said, there are? He says, yeah. But we've never gotten their autographs, but I bet that you could get them. So I went over across the street, and it was about 5 o'clock or so. And there was a matinee getting out, which I didn't know about matinees, but I do know a lot about them now. And the doors were open, and there was a curtain call coming up, and I ran to see the curtain call. And it was this gorgeous set, gorgeous with a chaise longue and beautiful office, whatever it was, combination office and living room and so on. And there was a gorgeous woman in a beautiful dress taking a bow first, and a lot of fancily dressed people around her. And so I said, oh, that's good. And I grabbed a playbill that was in back of the seat just outside the door where I was standing. And I get out, and I noticed everybody running down. In between the two theaters were the stage doors for those theaters, the Harris and the Selwyn. And I ran out in, and I joined the crowd. And I had my stage bill, which I still have a copy of. Okay. Wow. And I got to the lady who was sitting on the chaise longue. And she said to me, did you see the theater? And of course, I was a good little girl. And I said, I'm sorry to say I didn't. I've only seen your curtain call. And she said, well, I will sign your program. And I said, a little autograph too, on the side, because I had a little piece of paper just in case this didn't work out. And she said, fine. And she said, but you must promise me you will go to the theater. And I said, okay, I promise I will go to the theater, instead of a movie. And the person was Gertrude Lawrence, who was there with Dennis King. And she was in Pygmalion. She was Liza Doolittle, of course, in Pygmalion. And so I had, and I also have a little piece of yellow paper in pasted in one of my autograph books with her.
With Gertrude Lawrence's name. So let me ask you some of the other.
This is kind of getting bad. All right. But it was one of the ones that I had to keep because this was my introduction to the theater.
Because you kept your promise. You promised her that you would go to the theater.
I have another one there that I got too, which I kept, although it isn't signed on the front. It's signed on the back, but she was also there. I got her autograph separately. Mae West.
No.
Come on. And a thing I remembered, so what I got inside here, I didn't get her autograph here, but I got her autograph on piece of paper. So I put that in my book. But I got all the members of the cast practically inside of this thing.
What show was she? Wasn't doing sex at that point. What show was he?
She was with us. Come On Up, Bring Twice was the show. And she was, the thing I remember so very much about her was that she was so short and she wore a long gown. Even in the daytime, she wore a very long dress and had very high heels on them.
Huh.
And both she and later on Miriam Hopkins, who I got, they both had like what we used to call piano legs. And that's why they had the long skirts all the time.
Oh, because they had little spindly legs that they wanted to hide because the rest of her, of course, was known as being, yeah.
Well, of course, I had made a promise earlier to Gertrude Lawrence that I would go to the theater. So my birthday was coming up. And my mother asked me, what do you want? Do you want some money for the movies downtown? And I said, no, I want to go to the theater if it's all right with you. And she said, fine. And so she said, when you go up, you can buy some tickets. And she gave me this money. And I think it was a tremendous amount for that time. It was like $4 or $5 for front row seats, which, the movies were $1.20 for under 12 and $1.80 for adults, over 12.
Actually, that sounds like a lot of money for a movie.
I wasn't 12 yet. I had been 8, 11. And so I thought to myself, well, I would carry my birth certificate around a lot of times to the movies and shove it in to show them that I was still in the lower brackets for paying for things. But anyway, the theaters were the same thing. So I remember the first show I saw was a thing called Kiss Me Tell, which was one of those juvenile things of a cute little gal that has, a few little troubles, the kind of thing that Shirley Temple played later. And this Chorus Archer was the heroine. And there were some Chorus Archer things, like there were, like Mickey Rooney had Andy Hardy, there was Chorus Archer thing. And I believe Shirley Temple did play her once in a movie. Maybe it was Kiss and Tell. But by that time, I wasn't as big on movies as I was on the theater. When she was doing when Shirley Temple was a younger teenager. But I also saw a second one. I went down to the Erlanger Theater, which was also on Dearborn. It's not there anymore. And I saw A Streetcar Named Desire.
With?
Now, because I knew that it was a theater play, and that I could get to it easily. I didn't know about all the other theaters yet. I learned them very quickly after that. I knew the Harrison, the Selwyn, and the Erlanger, because they were all downtown, and I knew the backstages of the movie places.
Well, who was in Streetcar? Yeah, when you saw Streetcar.
Now, this is interesting. It was Anthony Quinn, Uta Hagen, and a gal named Mary Welsh playing Stella. But Anthony Quinn was that. And, I was 11 years old. Okay. I was not yet knowing all about The Streetcar Named Desire.
Yeah.
But I still remember, the rape scene and that Anthony Quinn held up a pair of purple silk pajamas and raised them all over that. And then, of course, the curtain came down right after that. And I just knew that man was hurting that woman. And I knew that the woman was a little touched, and so on.
Well,
but I
touched that she was raped, but yes.
And I did get Anthony Quinn's
really?
autograph in an autograph book that I had at that point, because I knew he was a movie star. I had no idea that that Ulla
Hagen was also, yeah.
And that's so funny because I didn't get her autograph. And I didn't get Uta Hagen's autograph when I saw her later. Several years later, there was an attempt to start a summer theater at the Edgewater Beach Hotel downtown. Well, it was on the north side, along the lake. And I saw her and Herbert Bergdorf, her husband. They had tried to start a summer theater there at the Edgewater Beach. It didn't go over after that. but I remember seeing her, and I remember meeting him, and so, but I never got their autograph because, you know, well, it was just not that.
Yeah, who wants to hogging it? Right, yeah.
And I even at one of the meetings of the American Theater Critics Association, I saw her again at the table, and I said, "No, I'm not collecting autographs anymore. You know, I'm not paid."
Wait, Marie, why did you stop? Why did you? When you became a critic, did you have to stop the autograph collecting?
Autographs by the time I went into college.
Oh,
I didn't get them anymore. I had a kind of some interesting thing. I went to all the different places, just name them, and I have their things. I'll show you.
Oh, she's going to show this. We're talking with Marie.
This was my best autograph book here.
Yeah.
Here. And I had everyone that you could possibly imagine, starting with Benita Granville, when you wouldn't have remembered very much, but I had
90 years old, so I know.
So here's Claire Trevor.
Claire, wow.
Claire Trevor.
Hold it up a little higher to the camera.
And this was interesting. This is June Havoc.
Oh my!
Who was, you know, little June, who was in
the inspiration for Gypsy,
and she put her lip print on for me. That was interesting. If you get a lip print, the other person I got a lip print from was when they were doing the voice of the turtle at this Harris or Selwyn, one of those two. They were there for a year, and Hugh Marlow was with them, and so on.
Hugh Marlow gave you a lip print?
No. And Hugh Marlow and K.T. Stevens. K.T. Stevens was in a couple of movies, not very many. The biggest one I remember is that she was in Kitty Foyle as one of Ginger Rogers' roommates. But she was Sam Goldwyn's niece. And so we all thought that she would get, you know, a lot. Hugh Marlow was the guy that was in, you might remember him from All About Eve. He was the writer. And he was there all the time, you know. I got to know them pretty well, as a matter of fact, you know, because I'd be at the Oriental Theater some weekend, but they would still be at the Harris with the voice of the turtle. And the other person was Vivian Vance, and I had her.
Vivian Vance,
who was the femme fatale at that time, not Lucy Ball's, you know, neighbor in that. And I remember she gave me a lip print too.
Really? Vivian Vance.
She was the femme fatale. You know, I started even putting their pictures in my book and everything so that I would remember who they were. But I had all kinds of people. There's Burl Ives. Oh my gosh. There was John Payne. But they're kind of getting that there. And there was Tony Martin.
Okay. He's a singer, right? Tony Martin?
The singer, yeah. He was Sid Cerese's husband, actually. This one I got on the back of an envelope at the Oriental. Dick Haynes. You remember
a lot of singers again.
I liked him very much at the time, but I didn't like the way he acted later. I'll tell you, there's a lot of these people like Bellas and Yolanda, the dancers. They were so big. If you look on, you know, people trying to get eBay programs and everything, Bellas and Yolanda are big with them. And here's Joan Blondell.
Wow. Wow, that's quite an autograph. Really, yeah.
And this one is amazing. Dana Andrews.
Wow.
I have a story about Dana Andrews that was interesting.
Tell it.
He was coming in, you know, by this time we were going to railroad stations because people would go from Los Angeles to New York and New York to Los Angeles through Chicago. Most of the time, you went to the Dearborn Street station, which doesn't exist anymore, except as I think there's a thing printed out of it, you know, a magazine being printed out of that place. But the other station was the things from New York and that. I forget the name of it now. There was 5 different stations in Chicago. You know, Union Station was the best known, I think, but very seldom took people from California to Chicago or Chicago to California. Although I have one great big bunch of autographs from the time they had a March of Dimes meeting in Washington with President Roosevelt, and a whole bunch.
Do you have FDR's autograph?
No, I don't have FDR. Although at one time, a person, Dorothy Shea, whom I had a fan club for. She was the Park Avenue hillbilly known for feuding the fussing and the fighting. Somehow, yeah. Well, I had a fan club for her so that I could write. And she got a letter from Eleanor Roosevelt. And so she sent me Eleanor Roosevelt's autograph, which is in an envelope. You know, I don't have her in a book, pasted in a book. I have her in the letter from Dorothy. But anyway, that particular place in Washington, that was the first time I ever saw Alan Ladd, whom I was crazy about. And so he signed it, and Sue Carroll Ladd, his wife. And there were a number of, I think Monty Woolley was there, Susanna Foster, people like that. They were all going to Washington for this. So I had a whole bunch of there. And then later on, Alan Ladd became an honorary member of Dorothy Shea's fan club that we had. And so I have several letters from him, you know, praising her because he loved her work and she loved his. We would always have a couple of honorary members, you know. One was Bing Crosby. I have a letter from him. And one was Betty Garrett and Larry Parks, who were big at the time. And she sent me a thing. I think Betty Garrett is still well known.
Well, yeah, from All in the Family. She was on for several seasons there.
Right, yeah. And so there were people like that that were members, not very many, but Alan Ladd, I have pictures of him autographed to me, and you know, and several letters, like when he was in England, Washington, and he'd always mention something that Dorothy Shea had done on television or whatever it was, you know. It was very, very nice. Anyway, I was going to say about the Dana Andrews thing. This was really interesting because Dana Andrews was very mean. He came in at this New York station that we had that only I, myself, and another gal from our group knew about it. And we went on a Sunday morning. I'll never forget that. You know, you go to church and then you go to the station. And
aren't you? I thought you were Jewish.
We thought it would be so good because he was so popular at the time to get Dana Andrews' autograph. And he was going in and he was so mean. He said, I don't know what you're bothering me for and all that. There was only two people there, you know, two kids. One was, you know, 12 years old and the other one was probably about that, 15, something like that. And we said, you know, we made a lot of a point to try to see you here because we like your work, you know. And anyway, we went through all this kind of thing. And finally, he stopped there and he signed my book. He signed the book and he said, I think you're right. I think you're quite nice. And so he signed it, see. But he said, but don't do this again. It was so funny. He said that and he went there. Well, many, many years later, when I was working at Southern Illinois University in Carbondale, and I was head of a baccalaureate program that was called University Studies, where I was the program. In fact, I would help make people up according to a formula and get this multidisciplinary degree. It was like because I had a multidisciplinary degree, I knew every place in the school. So I had a friend who was working with people that came to town that gave speeches in the town of Carbondale or at the university, speeches and other things. It was really nice because I saw Yves Montand that way too, but I didn't get his autograph. That was another funny story. But there at the table at one table was Dana Andrews.
Yeah.
Dana Andrews at one of the tables that I was invited to. And he was there because he was no longer popular in movies. And he had been an alcoholic and he was working on an anti-alcoholic campaign. And so he kept there. And I just sat there like that. And he said, do you know my work and everything? I said, yes, I know a lot about you. And I never asked him for his autograph. I never told him that thing. I said, yes, I know.
Never even, wow. I thought this was like you would say, and he apologized. Oh, wow. What a douche. Well,
I just never said that. I thought to myself, no, I'm not you. I'm Dr. Marie KILKER, and he's just Dana Andrews, a has-been. You know? Yeah. It was something because he had been so mean. He had been so mean. For no reason.
Yeah.
The only other mean person I ever saw when I was getting autographs was Frank Sinatra. He came through the gates of the Dearborn station, going like this with people, you know, waving them off and so on. And In fact, somebody took a picture of him, somebody from the newspapers, and they had the newspaper, "The Voice rushes to New York," or something like that. And I thought, nobody even came near him or something. And he was, "Get out, go, look," but running like this. And so I just disliked him, and therefore promoted not only Dorothy Shea, but I promoted Dick Haynes after that.
Yeah,
my friends, yes, because at least he would sign stuff and do things like that, you know.
Well, who's heard of Frank Sinatra now? I mean, nothing ever became of him.
A mean guy. He was a mean guy, you know. But I can remember that we went inside the station after this guy was there, and somebody came out, and it turned out to be Wayne Morris. Wayne Morris was a Warner Brothers movie star, was always in movies with Ronald Reagan and people. He was quite a big star at Warner Brothers. He had been in the Navy. In fact, he was in the Navy still at that time, because, you know, World War was on, and or was over. And he came in, and we said, "Oh, that's Wayne Morris." So we went up to him, and he stood by a thing, and he says, "I'm not important." He said, "You know, Frank Sinatra was on this show." He says, "We know." And he signed our books. So I have his thing. I have a little picture of him in it there. And we said, we are happy to have your autograph, because we value this more than we did Frank Sinatra. And the only other person I remember who was kind of into himself and mean was Burgess Meredith.
Really?
Yes, he came through one time. And I remember because he was also in one of the theaters at one point later. And I thought to myself, I'm not going to go see Burgess Meredith because he's a stinker. But it was so funny. We had this one young boy in our group who was very acerbic, I would say, if he was not treated well. And usually everybody liked him real well because he was kind of tiny and that he didn't look his age. And, you know, he went, "Oh, yes," and like that. And he went up to Burgess Meredith. He was coming through, and Burgess Meredith just pushed him aside and went on. And,
wow.
and this boy said, "Thank you, Mr. Goddard," because he was married to Paulette Goddard at the time. And, you know, he was famous for being married to Paulette Goddard. He says, "Thank you, Mr. Goddard."
That's nice. When you're
he was sharp. He was a sharp guy. He had all kinds of things to say to people and that kind of thing. He was really funny.
Can I ask you, Marie, what was the last autograph that you remember getting before you went to college?
Actually, it's something rather recent.
So yeah.
I got one autograph in all these years. Probably the last autographs I ever got were somebody that was connected with Dorothy Shea, maybe Frankie Lane, because I would be in her place, you know, sitting when she came to Chicago, and Frankie would drop in and all that. And, you know, he was very, very popular for his Mule Train and other songs and so on. He was a very nice person. I can remember that. But actually, I got one autograph in my book a few years ago. There was a person who was at the Oslo Theater. His name was David Howard. And David Howard was a minor person in a number of movies, but he had also been on Broadway several times, usually as a substitute for somebody. It was an older person. But anyway, he was very good. The last thing I remember, he was in that show where Brad Pitt was in and comes from the other country. I forget his name, but Brad Pitt was in the movie. And he was one of the people at this table. And he was also in 12 Angry Men or something like that on the stage and that. But he was a very big actor at the Oslo. He was a member of the Oslo Repertory Company. Now they have a repertory, but they don't have a repertory company.
Now, can I ask you, Marie, since we talk so much about Chicago, now at least we're moving to Florida.
I just went to him and said, "I'd like to have your autograph," because he was such a nice guy and such a good actor.
But moving away from autographs for a bit, what are the one or two greatest shows that you have seen being a theater critic in Florida? Like their greatest memories.
Greatest shows I've seen. The greatest shows I've seen have been in France.
Oh, all right.
And the one is the Théâtre du Soleil, which I think you and your wife Joyce went to with me.
It's not my wife; she's Dave's wife. We dally sometimes.
And that one was it was translated into English was 1789, and that was the French Revolution staged before, during, and after, immediately after, staged as a carnival. And you remember from the Théâtre du Soleil how unusual they are, because Ariane Mnouchkine, who is their leader, probably was the creator of the group creation, you know, because she always did the group creation. Before that, you always had the director doing things and an author or something like that. But she would, oh, Megan Terry, of course, did some things with people just, you know, playing around and so on and improvising and that. But then she wrote it down as a regular. This was the most wonderful show I've ever seen. And I was in, they had like bleachers set around, and they had booths for each people and little stages around, and then one main stage. And the people that came in late became part of the crowd. They were the crowd in Paris and so on like that, when the king was, you know, trying to get through and all that kind of, it was an absolutely fabulous show. It was a fabulous show. The Théâtre du Soleil, 1789. Two other things. One thing was Peter Brook's Midsummer Night's Dream. I thought those two shows were probably the best shows in the Western world in the second half of the last century.
Wow.
You know,
the Brook is well known.
Another one I was
and spare and stand.
I have to get though to some that were the most interesting I ever saw. I studied in Stratford-on-Avon for a whole summer in 1959, just before the Shakespeare Memorial turned into the Royal Shakespeare Theater. That was last year. And so they had, it was an anniversary theater of the company and also of the theater itself, the building. And so they had, everything was done by stars and everything was done by a different director. And that's where I saw Laurence Olivier do Coriolanus. And that was the most fantastic performance I've ever seen. It was just totally unforgettable. He was Coriolanus, and I think Mary Ure was his wife, and Edith Evans was his mother, and Andrews was Tyler
Being Andrews.
It was absolutely fabulous, particularly for the way he died. I mean, he was brought up on a promontory. You know, he was fighting against his enemies, and they were getting him. And they brought him to the end, and somebody then, as he was standing backward to the audience because they were pushing him off this promontory and like a hill outside of Coriolanus, and they got him and struck him, and he fell backward, and they held him by his ankles. He fell backwards, so you saw his face coming down when they had it. And Titus Ophidius, who was down below, took his dagger and stuck it in his midsection.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And then they let him down the further thing. It was the only time that I've ever seen anything where, you know, most of the time in a Shakespearean play, somebody will stab someone and then the next day, oh, what a wonderful guy he was, you know, or something like that. It's horrible. But in this one, you saw the recognition of Ophidius, you know, as they brought all the rest of him down and laid him down and so on. So that when he does say this was a worthy opponent and so on, this was a great man, it made sense. But Olivier did everything just beautifully. When he was standing in the marketplace, supposedly standing for the cheers of the people and everything, he just stood like, and he looked just like Christ, you know, before the judges.
I don't know who this Christ person is. I hear a lot about him.
And you know, he was a master of the monologue, of the one word.
Soliloquy.
And he said, you stay here, you know, and he put his hands down like that. And you thought, if you were even in the balcony, you thought that you were right there, you know, listening to him and so on. He was absolutely fabulous. I used to see him coming in and out of the stage door at times. And one time I remember we were sitting in this place called the Dirty Duck. It's actually the Black Swan or something like that, but it's a combination of, there's a small hotel, but it's basically a pub and an outside. And that's where the kids were there. And Mr. Lawton, Charles Lawton was, he was directing Lear, and he was also playing Bottom in Midsummer Night's Dream. And he would sometimes take us students for a beer or for Coke or whatever, out there. So we got to sitting out there sometimes, if we could afford it. And we saw Olivier coming in one time, and he was at the stage door, and we could see his feet. His feet were just totally red at the bottom from being held so much of the time when he was coming down. But he was there for rehearsals, everything. He was a perfect person. He was married to Vivian Lee then, and she was around town a lot. And I was surprised I never got her autograph, because I had seen her in Chicago at the Harris in a play. Anyway, by that time, I think I was older and I wasn't getting autographs anymore. And also I saw Audrey Hepburn do a play there, thing like that, and I didn't get her autograph. I should have gotten those. I should have just stepped it up, because I would have it.
Now, Marie, we have just a couple of minutes left, so I want to ask you a more personal kind of question, especially since you were talking about Laurence Olivier dying on stage. So this is a death-ish question. Joyce, David's wife, and David knew you and your husband quite well, Jim. You were married for many years. You were a great couple.
48 years, yes.
How did you, when he passed, how did you go on past that? Because it was a few years ago now. How did you get through the times of no longer having Jim?
It's very bad. It's very hard. But I have two daughters. And so, I can stay neither one of them living with me right
well, yeah, with you, but
I have two daughters to keep that alive. I was an only child. And I was very big on my parents, especially my mother. They're gone. But I also have some good friends here. And among them are the playwrights Jack Gahuli and Joe Morello. Jack, by the way, is very ill right now. He broke his femur about 3 weeks ago, and it was really bad. They thought he was not going to live, but he got through it. He got operated on, and he's now in his second rehab place, and he will probably be there for another 4 or 5 weeks.
Right.
He went into ICU for a long time, and Joe, she's his wife. She, at the same time that he broke his femur, her mother died. Now, they expected that, but she was 100 years old, but it was pretty hard, Thank God she had a sister that helped with that. But everything's happening at the same time, and so I friends, and then I had some good friends. I have one good neighbor on both sides of me. I have the neighbors from hell, but across the way, I have one from heaven.
Good.
And then I've had certain friends that one person that used to live here, they always go to the theater. He would always drive me because I get a comp and that was good. But I'm so near the Oslo. I mean, I could probably get there blindfolded. And I also am fairly near Florida Studio Theater. I can just whip right down, from a particular place. I go down to Ringling College of Art and Design, turn right on Coconut and goes right down to the place there. They're so good to me there too. They usually, because I'm kind of tethered to a walker right now. And they always save a handicap space for me in the lot when I'm coming. And so they're very good. They're very nice to me. I love that theater, because the thing I like about that theater is that they are small, but they always say small enough to get to know you and big enough to give you the kind of entertainment and other things that you deserve.
Well,
and they got 5 venues now. When I came here, they had just 1 venue.
Right, when they grow and they grind. You've been through so much of it, and God willing, Marie KILKER, you will be through many, many more, and you will get to see more seasons now that things are opening up.
I hope so. I hope we can get back with the American Theater Association, put their yearly meetings in other places, because I was always very big on that. I think that's where I met you first.
Well, not me.
Then I would work for you right away for This Month on Stage, and then now I think I'm a regular member. I'm probably one of the first members of your TotalTheater.com.
That's right.
And
yeah.
everybody here, quotes from TotalTheater.com.
That's right. Well, I want to remind people that you can read Marie's reviews going back like 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, and a couple of weeks ago, all about Florida theater, just by going to TotalTheater.com. You can spell it ER, you can spell it RE, TotalTheater.com. Look for KILKER, KILKER, Marie's reviews from Sarasota area theater in Florida, plus her
and France
are there too. So
I have many things from France and a lot of things from international in general too. But France, I have. So I think I'm the only one that writes from France.
Keep writing, keep going to the theater, keep in touch. Marie J. KILKER, has been an honor and a delight having you on the program today. I wish you, God knows, good health. A happy Rosh Hashanah to you. Are you Jewish or not? I thought you were Jewish. Yeah.
No, well, I was adopted by a Jewish mother, but she died last year. So I don't know how that happens, but I regularly work with the Jewish Federation here. I always give them a donation, and I always get their news, and I always publish it. And but actually, I'm a Roman Catholic by.
Oh my God! Well, I'm sorry to hear.
He's half Jewish.
It's good. We'll let you. We'll allow you. Marie J. KILKER, thank you. I'm going to let you go from the neighborhood. Health and good things for.
Yes, Happy New Year.
You too. And shalom to you. Bye-bye now.